The latest house price indices from Dr. Andrew Wilson's My Housing Market show that both house prices and unit prices remain steady over October. Now, this is asking prices we're talking about, which is a strong leading indicator into what's ahead for median sale prices, which are backward looking and only get reported in a month or two's time. So today's chat with Dr. Andrew Wilson gives us great insight into what's happening on the ground. If you want to keep up to date with what's happening in our property markets, please subscribe to this YouTube channel and we'll keep you informed each time a new show comes out if you click the little bell icon. If you believe everything you read in the media, you'd think that house prices are plummeting at a frantic rate and we're heading for real estate Armageddon. However, I know Dr. Andrew Wilson's My Housing Market keeps a careful track of asking prices. Now, asking prices are a solid indicator of what's ahead for eventually what becomes home sale prices, but they only get reported a few months down the track. So I'm keen to find out what's really happening on the ground in his latest housing price report. Hello, Andrew.
Yeah, good day, Michael. And as you suggested, asking prices are another mechanism we can use to understand what's happening in our housing markets. The advantage we have with asking prices is that it actually tells us exactly what's happening here and now, because our asking price data really reflects what's been asked in the market. We track asking prices on a daily basis, and then we put them all together over a month to come up with an aggregated position. And even though asking prices tend to be a little higher than sale prices, because of course there's the discount factor, which we all use when we're negotiating as vendors, they still represent quite solidly the trends in changes. We see higher asking prices when we see higher sale prices, because vendors obviously and agents obviously reflect what are current market conditions in terms of how they pitch their asking prices. But over time, the trends are quite clear that asking prices and sale prices track the same energy. And with the latest data for October, we're certainly seeing the same sort of energy in terms of trends that we've seen in the sale price market. And I think we'll see sale prices continuing to improve. That is that even though they're still falling, they're not falling at anywhere near the same rate as they did in August or September. My Housing Market measures asking prices for established houses and units. So we don't measure new houses, which differentiates us from other data providers. We're only looking at the established house market. It's obviously a larger sector of the overall housing market. And I think it's more robust because we're not talking about what new builders or the new housing market does have. And that, of course, is they have to cover margins and these sort of bits and pieces, and they're off the sale plans as well.
Andrew, I also think that's a more realistic indication of what's happening to the value of your house and my house, as opposed to what a new apartment complex or a new house and land package is bringing. In other words, it's an indication of resales in an established property market of our big capital cities, giving a better indication rather than some of the outlandish reports people are giving us.
Yeah, that's right, Michael. And once again, as I said before, it's more of a real-time insight into the marketplace. Of course, when we look at asking prices, we're looking at the total market, not just what's been sold. These are properties that are on the market at the moment. So it's the full market, not a quarterly snapshot or a monthly snapshot. It's every property that's for sale. We at My Housing Market use a number of different models. We use sale prices, we use asking prices, we use average days on market, and of course we have our auction results. And that's the point, that I think you need to correlate your data sets with other data sets to understand just what the trend in the market is. But the most important thing is to be able to have data as much of a real-time environment here and now, so you're not backward looking. We had a recent report of the September quarter data, and of course the September quarter was the winter market, and there was no surprise that reports had prices down, which we had in our September price data that was released a month ago. And we don't want to be looking back to what happened in July or August. We're more interested now.
So let's go through the house price data first and then the unit data.
We've seen a clear improvement over October compared to September. The underperformer, as we've seen in other months, has been the Sydney market. But the Sydney market reported a flat result over October in terms of asking prices. That was an improvement on the 0.5% fall that was reported over September. And other housing markets also reported slightly improved positions in terms of asking prices over October compared to September. Melbourne was up 0.4%, Brisbane up 0.3%, and Perth up 0.9% over the month. So these are incremental increases, but the trends are clear. The Adelaide market, which we know has been continuing to provide very strong clearance rates, weekend in, weekend out, produced a very strong result, up by 3% over the months. All markets, with the exception of Sydney, reporting higher median asking prices for established houses over October compared to September, and Sydney was flat over the month. When we look at the annual results, again, they correlate with what we're seeing with other measures. The Sydney market's down by 0.5% for established house asking prices over the past year. Melbourne up by 1.7%, Perth up by 9.1%, and the Adelaide and Brisbane markets continue to certainly have strong results. Adelaide up by 20.9% and Brisbane up by 18.8%. No doubt that we're seeing an improvement, particularly in the Sydney market over the past month for houses.
Okay, what about apartments, Andrew?
Similar results for apartments, Michael. The difference is that we saw all capital city markets reporting an increase in asking prices for established units. And I think this is important that we are dealing with established units, not new units. We know there's a lot of new unit developments in some capital city markets. So this is a different measure, but still showing the same trend. Adelaide again was the leader over the month, up by 4%, followed by Melbourne up by 1.5%, Perth up 1.4%, Sydney market up by just 0.2%, so generally flat, similar to houses, and Brisbane up by 0.5%. Similar results when we look at the annual breakdown in asking prices for established units, Michael. Sydney, similar to houses, down by 1.4% over the year. Melbourne up by just 0.2% over the year, Perth up 4.9%. And the big performers again were Adelaide and Brisbane. Adelaide up by 17.5% and Brisbane up by 15.2%. So again, we have that differentiation between our capital city markets. And again, it's a story of Sydney leading the market up, leading it down. And maybe the Sydney market's going to lead the market back up again. We're certainly seeing similar results, as I mentioned before, from the latest sale price data, as well as auction clearance rates, and average days on market are also falling in most capital city markets. So the spring selling season so far this year, Michael, has been a positive. It certainly offsets a lot of the gloom and doom that's been discussed in regard to housing market outlook. There's no doubt that markets are performing better now we've finished the first 2 months of spring than they did through winter. And I think that we will start to perhaps see in all measures a bottoming out of our housing market, particularly Sydney and Melbourne, perhaps by the end of this year. But I think we're certainly set up for some prices growth to continue through 2023. Of course, there's a lot to depend on interest rates particularly, but interest rates really, I think, have been shrugged off over spring so far, Michael. I really think the answer to the question, why haven't prices collapsed, as was predicted, is that we just are in the midst of a very strong economic environment. Our labour market is really at record levels with a very low unemployment rate. I just think that Australians are getting on with the business of life and haven't been seduced into the doom and gloom. And that means getting back into the housing market, particularly when prices are lower. And I think that's, obviously a time when those value perceptions start to act on buyers. And I think the latest data is continuing to validate that, Michael.
Well, just before people poo-pah all this, and when some results will come out over the next months of falling median sale prices, I just want to reiterate what you said, but that's what happened 60 days ago, 90 days ago. This is now what's happening in time. And I'm noticing on the ground that, I guess let's call it peak fear, has passed.
Yes.
There's lots of factors affecting our property markets, the availability of credit, interest rates, your borrowing capacity, how you feel about your finances. But I think it all falls into consumer confidence, consumer sentiment. And that was very low. It was a dark cloud covering all the good economic factors. But in my mind now, if you look at auction clearance rates, 60% of vendors and buyers are coming to an agreement every time they meet. So on average, the fear seems to be disappearing and people are getting on with their lives, Andrew.
And the trend clearly is upwards in auction clearance rates through spring. That's inarguable. And we may even see a 70% clearance rate in Sydney before the year's out. It's pushing up towards that. So that's inarguable. And I think the point is that the trend data, whether it's established asking prices or sale prices, is clearly correlating and showing an improved outlook.
We'll be back in a couple of days with our regular weekly Property Insider chat, where we've got lots to talk about, including the auction clearance rates, the budgets, inflation. So look forward to catching up with you in a couple of days, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks very much, Michael.